Hey everyone, welcome back again to another React tutorial. And in this session, we will look into one of the most common and widely used React feature known as debouncing. Basically, we go for using debouncing concept in order to prevent or minimize time-consuming or complex logic to get executed more frequently. Or in other words, the most commonly used example for debouncing is the search feature. Consider we have a simple search bar right inside this React project. And upon each keystroke, you will notice that this handle search is getting executed every time because we have passed the same handler inside the onChange callback. Consider if you are going to make some complex logic or API call right inside this handle search method, then that is going to get executed upon each keystroke. And that in turn is not going to be a best practice, right? It is going to reduce the performance of your React project. So this is the place where the debouncing comes in handy. With the help of debouncing, we can prevent this task from executing more often. Rather, we can just trigger this task only when the user stops typing in the input field. Hope you got a better understanding of what debouncing actually is. With this idea and without any further ado, let's get started. Alright, now let's start by building up the basic UIs first. Here we have a homepage component, and for this project, we will get the help of AndDesign and Tailwind CSS to build up the basic UI stuffs. Here inside the return, we are going to have a flex component inside which we will define our form. And inside this form, we are going to have a single item or a single input field called the search bar. And as I refresh this page, you will notice that we have a simple search bar right at the center. And for now, we have completed building the UI, but we haven't added any logic for the search feature, right? Now let's try to do that. Well, here inside this input field, let's try to make use of the onChange callback, and that is going to accept an event handler called handle search. So this is going to be a custom function which we will define here. Inside this handle search method, and inside this function is where we will try to introduce the search logic. And for now, we will simply try to extract the search term what the user types and console log the same. And let me inspect it. Upon each keystroke, you will notice that this console log statement is getting executed. So consider if you are going to make an API call right inside this handle search function, then that is not going to be a best practice since it is going to get executed upon each keystroke, because we have passed the event handler right inside the onChange callback. So this is the best example where you can go for using debouncing. Well, in order to use debouncing, let's start by installing the package from Lodash. Let's type in the command npm install Lodash. Following that, we need to run the second command, which is npm install at types /Lodash. After installing these two packages, let's try to import debouncing from Lodash. So we can import debouncing right from the Lodash. And all we need to do is, we just simply try to wrap this entire handle search function inside the debouncing method. Here we can go for using debouncing. And this debouncing method is going to majorly accept two arguments. The first is going to be the function callback, or the function which is going to perform the search logic. And the second is going to be the delay. Now, inside this debouncing, let's try to paste the same logic of the search which we have already defined. And the second argument, I will pass the delay as 500 milliseconds, which means that it is going to execute this entire function once the user stops typing in the input field. And after a delay of 500 milliseconds, it is going to perform, or it is going to execute this method, right? And once the user again starts typing, it resets this delay. And after a delay of 500 milliseconds again, it is going to execute this same function, right? And this time, if you see, if I inspect this, head over to the console, and as you can see here, as I keep typing, the handle search is not getting executed at all. Once I stop typing, it is going to trigger the handle search method. So this is what the debouncing is doing behind the scene. So as I keep typing, it is not going to execute the handle search. Once I stop typing or providing input to the input field of the search bar, it is going to trigger the handle search method. So this is going to be a performance optimization technique. With this, we can prevent unwanted API calls or even prevent complex logic from executing more frequently. Say for example, if I change this delay to 3000 milliseconds, as I finish typing, after a delay of 3 seconds, it is going to execute this handle search. Now you understood how to use debouncing in React. This seems to be working perfectly fine, but say for example, unless we try to have a scenario where this entire search bar gets unmounted. In such cases, the debouncing is not going to stop its execution. So now let's try to explore how to handle such unmounting while working with debouncing in React. And for doing so, let me introduce a state variable, render second component. It is going to accept a boolean variable. Initially it is set as false. Here I have just updated the code. When the user types the input field, upon the first keystroke, I am going to set render second component state to true. And once it is set as true, we are going to render the simple text data rather than the form component, which contains the search field. Right? Now save this, and if I refresh this page, and if you pay attention, you will notice that as I press something in the search input field, it is going to render this text data what we have here rather than the form component which contains the input search field. And if I refresh this page and search it again, you will notice that after a delay of 3 seconds, though we have switched the UI from the form component to the single text data, the search happens behind the scene. So I can also refresh this again, and if I type this, we got navigated to the second component, but still we are getting the search logic, and after a delay of 3 seconds, we are getting the resultant value. So that is not something which we want. So in this scenario, as we redirect to some other component, we don't want the search logic to get executed again. So how do we prevent this debouncing from getting executed once the component gets unmounted? And for that is where we get the help of the clear function which is available in debouncing. And to do that, let's create a use effect. And here inside this use effect, we are going to make use of the cleanup function. So if you wonder what use effect and cleanup function is, then you can check out my previous video tutorial where we have explained in detail about the use effect hook and the cleanup functions in a more detailed manner. Right? I will also leave the link for that video at the card at the top right. So here inside this use effect, let's make use of the cleanup function. And what this cleanup function is going to do is, it simply tries to cancel the debounce method. Dependency for this use effect is going to be the return value of this debounce method. So we can pass the same here. Let's have this use effect right after this handle search method. In this case, once the component gets unmounted, or whenever the value for this handle search gets altered, we are going to make use of this cleanup function which will cancel the previously initiated debounce method. So with this scenario, if we refresh this page, as I navigate to the second component, you see it is not triggering the handle search. Since we have navigated to the second component, we don't want this debouncing to get triggered. So we are able to get the same expected result now. This is one other scenario where you can go for cleaning up your debounce method if that component is getting unmounted. So this is purely going to be a performance optimization technique. So that is basically all about how to use debouncing and how to clean up those debouncing methods in your React project. Hope you find this video useful. If you do so, consider subscribing, and I will see you again in the next one.